your family. So go on, give them a hug, maybe a kiss, and consider how these people have impacted you. My family has shaped me into the woman that I am today. Ever since I was a little girl, I have had big dreams. And with every dream came support from my family. I once dreamt that I would become a professional baker. Now, my family wanted this dream to come true just as badly as I did. And so, my parents went out and they got me a personalized apron, way too many recipe books, and an easy bake oven. A little while later, my dream changed, and I decided I wanted to become an artist. And so again, my parents went out and they got me crayons and colored pencils and markers and way too many sketchbooks to help me along my way. Over the years, my dreams continued to change until I finally realized I wanted to become a park ranger for the National Park Service. And like every dream before, my family provided me with what I needed to be successful. From the moment that I dove into my studies at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, up until I drove across the country to work at this iconic place, my family was there. When I talk about family, I'm referring to my divorced parents and my 3 older siblings. For others, however, family might look different. Family might be your grandparents. Family might be an adopted child. Family might be your friends, your coworkers, or your neighbors. Whoever you choose to call family, they will shape who you become. I believe that families impact the future of our country. Abraham Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt are 2 presidents with families that shaped them into iconic leaders of our country. Abraham Lincoln's parents were named Thomas and Nancy Hanks. His most influential family member, however, was his stepmother named Sarah Bush. Abraham's father was a cabinet maker and a farmer who simply didn't understand why his son wanted to gain an education. And his lack of support led Abraham to have very negative feelings toward his father. Abraham's mother, however, who had no formal education of her own, focused her efforts on instilling honesty and curiosity within her son. Unfortunately, she passed away when Abraham was only 9 years old, leaving him alone with no one to support his dreams. Shortly after Nancy Hanks' death, Abraham's father remarried to a woman named Sarah Bush. Sarah became Abraham's stepmother and eventually his greatest supporter. Sarah recognized Abraham's willingness to learn, and so she encouraged him to gain a formal education, despite how her new husband felt about it. Unfortunately, the lack of schools in Abraham's hometown made it difficult for him to gain this education. But for over 9 years, he attended school on and off, whenever he could, resulting in a grand total of less than 12 months of formal education. Although this dream of his seemed unattainable, Sarah continued to encourage him. She told him, just keep on reading. And he did just that. It's been said that Abraham borrowed and read every single book in his hometown. Sarah's support shaped Abraham into a man with the confidence and willingness to try new things. And this demeanor led him to work as a flatboat captain, become a lawyer, and eventually serve as our country's 16th president. Throughout every new opportunity in Abraham's life, he continued to read and learn. Reading and learning. Passions he may never have pursued without the support of his angel mother and stepmother. Abraham once said that Sarah was his best friend in the whole world, and that no son could ever love a mother more than he loved her. Abraham's life and our country's history may have looked completely different if he would have never have received support from his family. Just like Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt was impacted by his family as well. Theodore's father, also named Theodore, provided his son with the materials he needed to be successful. Now, when Theodore was a small child, he struggled with asthma attacks and illnesses. And his father recognized and assisted his son through these physical limitations. For example, when Theodore had his asthma attacks, his father would physically carry him to the family carriage. And he gave him rides throughout the night so that air would be forced into his son's lungs. Theodore's father was also the first to recommend that his son start wearing glasses after watching him struggle to hit a target during shooting practice. Theodore's father always said, "You have the mind, but you have not the body. You must make your body." And so, a gymnasium was built into the Roosevelt household to encourage physical health and to strengthen the children's bodies. Again, Theodore's father always focused on the needs of his children, starting with their educational, or physical, and following with their educational. Theodore and all of his siblings were homeschooled, and they each had their own tutor so they could receive a good education despite their physical limitations. Shortly after the Civil War began, Theodore's father worked alongside Abraham Lincoln, helping the soldiers and their families in need. Theodore shared this passion of helping others with his father. And this passion led him to attend Harvard University, where he studied natural history. 2 short years after attending college, Theodore's life was shattered. After receiving the news that his father had passed away from stomach cancer. In our lives, we all will experience the loss of a blood-related or chosen family member. And it's in these moments of grief where we are reminded of how drastically our lives have been impacted by the people we have lost. For Roosevelt, losing his father encouraged him to pursue a life of public service. And so he changed his degree to history and government with the hopes of changing laws for the betterment of society. a dream he believed his father would be proud of. Despite his physical limitations, Theodore's dream came true, as he served as our country's 26th and youngest president. Theodore would later go on to write that his father impacted his life more than any other person, and that he was the greatest man he ever knew. With the odds stacked against them both, Abraham Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt became difference makers of our country through the support of their family. And so I'd like you to take a moment tonight to consider how you have been impacted by the people you choose to call family, by the people you're sitting beside tonight. And consider how you have impacted them. If members of your family have dreams, chase those dreams right alongside them, no matter how big or unattainable they may seem. For we have learned from our presidents past that shortcomings are not setbacks. They are stepping stones to success.
States of America. It's hard to imagine, but not long ago, this great land of ours was pure wilderness. A place where millions of bison roamed freely throughout the plains. And those who lived off the land revered it as sacred ground. Yet this country would face a dramatic change, quickly becoming the most advanced nation in the world, in technology, in peace, and in power. From its inception, the United States has shaped itself under the guidance of strong leaders, leaders who have taken risks, stood up to adversity, and never let go of their vision for a better country. Mt Rushmore reminds us of them, and the countless Americans who have made great sacrifices to ensure the lasting legacy of our country. Freedom. We strived for it, we died for it, we live for it. The year was 1923. The place, the Black Hills of South Dakota. State historian Doane Robinson proposed that these granite outcroppings could be the site of an enormous monument dedicated to the heroes of the West, such as Lewis and Clark and Chief Red Cloud. But commissioned sculptor Gutzon Borglum had a different concept in mind. Borglum was a passionately patriotic man and believed that a more fitting tribute should honor the American experience. A memorial that would represent our ideals, our dreams, and our accomplishments as a country. A memorial that would convey a spirit of patriotism. Borglum chose his canvas carefully, the giant granite rock face of Mt Rushmore. And in 1927, work on the mountain began. Borglum assembled a team of local miners, ranchers, and lumbermen to help with construction. The sculptor built a model of the presidents to serve as a guide. Every inch on the model represented 1 foot on the mountain. Year after year, Borglum and his crew hung perilously off the side of the mountain, drilling and blasting their way to reach granite solid enough for carving. It took 14 years and nearly $1 million to complete the 4 60-foot faces. And even though the sculptor did not live to see the very final touches put into place, he was able to carry out his vision. 4 great Americans immortalized in stone, symbolizing the democratic society in which we live, the struggle for our independence, the fight for our freedom, and the sacrifices we have made since our country began more than 200 years ago. It was a time of rebellion and of war. It began as an uprising against British rule and turned into a full-fledged crusade for personal freedom and national independence. The American Revolution. From 1775 to 1783, up to 250,000 patriots engaged in battle. Even during the toughest times, when the Continental Army seemed undisciplined and ill-equipped, one man's courage and determination ultimately led the troops to victory over the British. The future father of our country, George Washington. Born and raised in colonial Virginia, George Washington grew up to be a firm believer in American independence. Even though his heart yearned for quiet family life at his Mount Vernon home, his deep commitment to the Republic made him answer the call of his country time and time again. As general, Washington became an instant hero throughout the colonies. The public was so enamored with him that many people wished that he become king. But Washington scoffed at such an idea.
The army must serve the country, but not rule it. Express your utmost horror and detestation of the man who wishes to overturn the liberties of our country. George Washington, 1783.
It was this kind of insight and integrity that made him the perfect person to oversee the creation of a new federal government. With no blueprint to follow, Washington kept the colonies united and on course during the infant years of this nation. And after ratification of the Constitution, when he was unanimously elected first President of the United States, Washington was keenly aware that he was laying down the framework for future presidents to follow. Washington's legacy is that of a man who was first in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen. In his inaugural address, he spoke of the task that lay before this new nation.
The preservation of the sacred fire of liberty and the destiny of the Republican model of government are justly considered as deeply, perhaps as finally staked, on the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people. George Washington, 1789.
George Washington welded this union, but it would take another great visionary to expand it. Thomas Jefferson, 3rd President of the United States.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thomas Jefferson, 1776.
Thomas Jefferson was the voice of the American people, inspiring patriots with his carefully crafted words written in the Declaration of Independence, the document that gave birth to our nation. It was also Jefferson who fought for religious freedom and the democratic notion that people should have a say in government, two very American principles we cherish today. Thomas Jefferson always thought of himself more as a scientist or scholar than as a politician. And it was this quest for knowledge that played a role in the greatest achievement of his presidency. In 1803, Jefferson acquired the French lands west of the Mississippi in the Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the size of the country. In an effort to find out what America now owned, Jefferson sent Meriwether Lewis and William Clark on their famous expedition out west. It was an exciting time of discovery for new Americans. However, what was good for a growing nation was not necessarily good for its original inhabitants. During this time of expansion, many Native Americans were uprooted from their homes and hunting grounds and pushed farther west. But during an address to a group of Cherokee chiefs, Jefferson prophesied about future relations between natives and new settlers.
I shall rejoice to see the day when the red men, our neighbors, become truly one people with us, enjoying all the rights and privileges we do, and living in peace and plenty as we do, without anyone to make them afraid, to injure their persons, or to take their property, without being punished for it according to fixed laws. Thomas Jefferson, 1808.
Jefferson's dream was slow to be realized as conflicts between the U.S. government and Native Americans set off a chain of events that dramatically reduced Native populations throughout the 19th century. Thomas Jefferson believed in the promise of America and had faith in the American people. But this faith would truly be tested nearly 60 years later, when the Republic came dangerously close to unraveling. The Civil War was the most tumultuous period in American history. The differences between the states had deeply divided a nation, pitting brother against brother on American soil. But it was the determination of one man to keep the United States united. Abraham Lincoln, our 16th president. Abraham Lincoln was a self-made man of great character, a frontiersman who came from humble beginnings. When Lincoln was inaugurated in 1861, he faced more adversity than any other president in U.S. history. Many southern states had withdrawn from the Union. And even though Lincoln opposed war, he warned the South in his inaugural address that he would take whatever measures necessary to stop the rebellion.
In your hands, my dissatisfied fellow countrymen, and not in mine, is the momentous issue of civil war. The government will not assail you. You have no oath registered in heaven to destroy the government, while I shall have the most solemn one, to preserve, protect, and defend it. Abraham Lincoln, 1861.
The Civil War raged on for 4 brutal years. But Lincoln stuck to his commitment to democracy. His main objective was to save the Union, and he also strongly believed in freedom for all Americans. Until slavery was abolished, Lincoln felt the U.S. could never truly be the home of the free. Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation began the process that ended the evils of slavery forever. Over 500,000 Union and Confederate soldiers lost their lives in the Civil War. But during his famous Gettysburg Address, Lincoln reminded the American people what this war was really all about.
That we here highly resolve that these dead should not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that this government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Abraham Lincoln, 1863.
Over the next 50 years, the United States would go through a dramatic transformation. The year 1900 was coming around the bend, and America was turning from a rural republic to a budding industrial power. It was clear that this new century, which burst with hope, needed a fresh start and a fresh approach. It was Theodore Roosevelt, our 26th president, who led the way.
Is America a weakling, to shrink from the work of the great world powers? No! The young giant of the West stands on a continent and clasps the crest of an ocean in either hand. Our nation, glorious in youth and strength, looks into the future with eager eyes and rejoices as a strong man to run a race. Theodore Roosevelt, 1897.
He was energetic, he was robust, and he was eager to show the world that America was a force to be reckoned with. Theodore Roosevelt believed in the strenuous life. Frail and sickly as a young boy, he overcame his illnesses and grew up to be a naturalist, a cowboy, a war hero, an author, and President of the United States by the young age of 42. His vigorous outlook on life transferred to the Oval Office. Roosevelt was a man of action. He promoted economic freedom and was a friend to the working class, protecting their rights against big business and what he called the criminal rich. Roosevelt also expanded the country's power abroad. It was his support of the 1903 revolution in Panama that led the U.S. to acquire territory for the construction of the Panama Canal. This massive undertaking not only created a valuable link between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, but it put the United States on the map in world politics. Yet, Roosevelt may be known best for his passion for the outdoors. He was vocal about conservation, and through the power of his presidency, he provided federal protection for almost 230 million acres of land.
To waste, to destroy our natural resources, to skin and exhaust the land instead of using it so as to increase its usefulness, will result in undermining in the days of our children the very prosperity which we ought by right to hand down to them amplified and developed. Theodore Roosevelt, 1907.
The pursuit of the American dream did not end with Theodore Roosevelt's term. Instead, it has carried us into the 21st century. Throughout history, countless Americans have made great sacrifices so that we can enjoy the freedoms of this land.
The only thing we have to fear... I have a dream today. Ask not what your country can do for you.
The same freedoms guaranteed in our Constitution and Bill of Rights.
What do we want?
The same freedoms millions of people have sought since the first years ago.
State or sovereignty,
of whom or which,
God Betson Borglum reminds us of this with his timeless memorial. 4 Americans representing the birth, growth, preservation, and development of this country. All embodying the spirit of our nation. All advocates of freedom, dignity, and the ideals of American life.
Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of rain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise and join in singing America's national anthem.
At this time, I invite all military personnel, past and present, to the stage. If you're unable to come, please appoint someone to represent you. I also invite those who have lost a loved one in military service to consider sending a representative forward. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask that we recognize a moment of silence in remembrance of 9/11 tonight. as we recognize this moment in history. I'd also like us to recognize the men and women on the stage beside me. And yet tonight, they are bonded together on stage. For most, this is the only public recognition they will ever receive for their willingness to serve. As they rejoin their families, let's show them how we feel about them with another round of heartfelt applause. This concludes the evening lighting ceremony. I'd like to thank you all for attending tonight, and I'm going to remind you of a few important things as you exit the amphitheater. Again, please remember to pay for parking. Remember your personal possessions, including your children. Keep your group together, as it's easy to become separated. If you plan to separate, please identify a gathering location to reconnect. Please be courteous as we exit after the program and from the parking structure. Thank you for obeying the speed limit, and please drive safe on your way home. Thank you, and good night.